Imagine you're playing a game with punishing execution, the potential for run-killing luck, inconsistent controls, and ever-changing mechanics. Now, imagine you're not just playing one of those games, but 20. Not only do you have one shot at running the gauntlet, but you have 99 other runners trying to knock you off. This is the tale of the Big 20 NES race number 13. It's a tale of hidden challengers, world record holders, potential game-ending soft locks, stubborn ghosts, and so much more. The story of a main event and a battle for glory that I think the speedrunning world needs a lot more of. It's hard to call yourself a gamer in 2020 unless you've got a whole backlog of games that you'll never be able to complete. When most of us sit down for an afternoon, we're lucky to knock one of these games out. But 100 speedrunners got together for a race where they were able to knock out 20 classics in just a few hours. I'm YoBGS, and I'll be the first to tell you, forget about NASCAR, forget about F1, because the Big 20 speedrunning mega race is all the race you're going to need. Except don't actually forget about those other two because they're very important and serve a need. To be honest with you, I had no idea what to expect going in. The event had a pre-show, and I loved it because it did a great job of establishing that, these were some top quality runners, from Cool Kid in the world of Mega Man to Andy Sui in Ducktales, Lack Attack 24 in Zelda 1. It meant that there were a ton of contenders vying for the crown. And as it got closer to go time, this really cool thing happened. Dozens of runners started coming in blind, registering at the last second, and pushing the number of runners to over 100. I mean, big whoop, right? People signing up at the last minute, they probably haven't even been practicing the games. They just want to have fun on a Saturday. And nothing wrong with a fun run. That's what I do for most of the games that I play. But what if I told you one of these last second entries hadn't streamed in the 6 weeks since the games list was announced? They hadn't submitted any runs to speedrun.com. They hadn't done anything. Total silence. Before I recap the games and the race itself, I wanted to say that this is what the world of speedrunning is doing so right now. It was a well-attended race with an incredibly hyped pre-show. You had big-name titles that people recognized. The comms for this race were unbelievable. The play-by-play and the color from Sinister One, The Cove, and Cananophone. It taught me more in 4 hours about the games than most people will learn in a lifetime. Not to mention, like I said before, the runners of these games were top-notch. I think a lot of times in speedrunning, the upper echelon doesn't come out for tournaments, or it's kind of what I call it the Bobby Fischer effect, right? They figure they're already at the top of the leaderboard. They don't have anything to gain by winning a race, so they just kind of stay back. And I think all in all, sometimes that can hurt a lot of different tournaments. So are you ready for the games? Because we've got games, tons of games. Another awesome thing about this tournament, by the way, 6-screen speedrunning action. I like those hand moves. So this was another great aspect about the tournament. They had the top 3 runners in first place, the people in first, second, and third, and then the bottom 3 cycled out throughout the tournament. So of the other 97 people, everybody got a little bit of screen time, which I thought was a really cool idea. Now, here is what you came for. The games themselves, and why I think this is the epitome of 8-bit excellence. So first up is Mario 3, and all you had to do in Mario 3 was beat 3/4, which can be done in a number of ways. It's an execution-based game, so like the field stayed relatively tight, and some of the more well-rounded runners got an early lead. But here's the thing, for every game in this race that was like that, there was an element of randomness that allowed any lucky runner to get right back into the fray, like Rescue Rangers 2. That's the next game, and the final boss was the gatekeeper here because it was this ghost thing. You had to beat the ghost house in Rescue Rangers 2, and some of the top tier runners lost upwards of a minute on this thing because if it didn't want to make itself vulnerable, there was nothing you could do about it. Alright, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a standard NES classic, except you have to not only get through the dam, which sucks in and of itself, but you also have to beat Mecha Turtle here. It definitely proved to be a stumbling block for a lot of the newer runners. Not much to say here, except, hang on, wait a sec. Remember that runner I mentioned a few minutes ago? Well, guess who's entered the big screen? That's right, Yogi the Monk. Alright, so Mario 1 was your standard run right, get to the end of World 3, don't use any warps. And that meant that the top tier runners made quick work of this challenge, and the field itself began to separate itself into more like what you would say chunks. And Mega Man made for some awesome moments because Cool Kid basically put on a clinic. He played the game in what looked like twice the speed of everyone else that was on the screen at the time. Using fast movement skills and special tricks, he toppled all the bosses. It was amazing. Meanwhile, Marble Madness was arcade goodness at its finest. It didn't hurt too many of the top tier runners, but as you worked your way down the standings, you'd see a lot of people that were losing time. And I see this arcade goodness because basically you have until the timer runs out to beat the game. You fail, all the way back to square one. You succeed, oh so satisfying, and you get to move on to Little Samson, which was up next. And by the way, this game raised the average cost per game of some of the titles in the tournament through the roof. Because, fun fact, I've got a little game store out in rural America where I live. They have a boxed copy of Little Samson, and right now they want about $2,500 for it. But there are tons of unique characters here to pick from, so of course you're going to be running around as a mouse, you're going to be pooping out bombs. What? Stop playing it. You're going to be pooping out bombs. Anyway, this seemed like the pop quiz of the run, okay? It was Zelda 2. Now, if you knew where to go, you knew how to get there, getting the candle, beating the first palace, you could make it out to be quick work. And that held especially true for one runner, the mysterious soul who was continuing to separate from the field as time ticked on. If you dig games with a lot of precise platforming and super tight movement, Chip 'n Dale All Zones was an absolute treat. Not to mention, it had this weird little trick in it where, if you let the demo of the game play, it fixed all of the RNG, so all of the boss patterns were the same for everybody in it. And it meant that the run just came down to execution, which, given the RNG that Chip 'n Dale 2 was, being able to have consistency in the first game, I thought was a really cool contrast. So anyone who can beat Castlevania, much less run through it like it's nothing, gets props in my book. And by the way, my book is called How to Win at Nintendo Games 2. Now with info on tons of these games, check it out. Except I think that it came out in 1984 or something like that. But yeah, for purposes of this race, you remember the mystery boy I told you about earlier? He's starting to extend his lead here, but there is a huge run gate on the way. Yeah, and it's called beating Mike freaking Tyson, okay? Now this is similar to Marble Madness in that you're either gonna do it and maybe lose 30 seconds from, the first place person, or you're not going to, and you're going to be stuck until you move on. And granted, how intent Tyson looked on Saturday for the race, a lot of people got stuck there for quite a while. Now, when you hear that Tetris, of all things, is up after Tyson, you may be wondering how this could stack up. Stack. Tetris. Like, comment, and subscribe! But seriously though, there's a way in Tetris to start at any level up to level 18, which means the pieces were flying fast and furious, especially because NES Tetris, super frustrating. Don't know if you played Tetris 99 or some of the more modern games, but they're way more lenient than NES Tetris. Now at this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how could this get any harder? Well, how about beating Mario 2? When I was a kid, I barely got out of World 2 on this game. And at this point, one of the biggest challenges for 99 of these runners actually wasn't beating Mario 2 itself, it was catching up to some of the other runners. Zelda 1, by the way, is the next game. Now, you do whatever you can to beat level 5. This was amazing to watch, not only for the Zelda play, but because Yogi the Monk, remember I told you about Yogi earlier? Yogi started to separate himself by almost an entire game over some of the competition. His entrant, who wasn't even part of the competition until the pre-show, is now on the run of their life. Now, after Zelda, the runners moved on to what I thought was going to be one of the toughest challenges of the run, getting 6 E-Tanks in Metroid. And obviously, I kind of thought it was challenging because that's one of the games I have the least experience with growing up, and knowing the whole map of the game seemed really hard. But turns out it was actually one of the tougher runs in the race, because there's a potential in it for a soft lock. And there were some of the top tier runners of this game lost upwards of 10 minutes to just soft locking over and over. And if you're not familiar, soft locking means you have to reset in order to keep playing. Basically, your character gets stuck somewhere and you have to reset. That's the only way you can keep going. Well, Yogi, meanwhile, completely cruised through Metroid, and some of the top runners lost minutes, like I said. So he extended his lead. It was amazing to watch. Here's a question for you. How could beating a game on easy end a runner's quest for Big 20 glory? You might be thinking these runners are great. What was easy going to do to pose a challenge? Well, what if they didn't play on easy? What if they played on normal? Yeah, that was the challenge for Ducktales. It's simple enough, beat the game on easy, don't do the moon skip. But the switch to normal actually cost Lack Attack about 12 minutes. And at the pace that Yogi was on, that basically put Lack Attack out of the running. Okay, by this point, you figure fatigue has to be a factor. You remember 16 games worth of runs, you should get a break, right? No, you're not getting a break. The next game was Contra. You have to beat all of Contra and beat it fast, which at this point, Yogi was building an insurmountable lead, and his incredible play in Contra only made the runaway that much more impressive. By the way, you may be wondering about Yogi the Monk at this point, and many people were that were watching live, but Yogi's like a multi-time winner in the past and was arguably one, like, if people knew that Yogi was entering heading into it, they would have been one of the favorites. And cruised through 3 stages of Batman, that was the next game, got through it like it was nothing. The only major tactical error that Yogi had made up to this point was in Mario 1. All that time ago. It's amazing. It actually happened that his last slip up was like an hour ago at this point. And it was kind of cool because people in chat were questioning Yogi's gameplay. And it's like, you have to be playing well for people to be like, wait a minute, how's this guy so far ahead of the world record holders? So I don't know about you, but in stressful times, I find that like relaxing music really helps me out. And that was the case for the Big 20, because up next we had Mega Man 2. Now, the 19th game was about beating all of the robot masters, a clinic in how to take out the bosses, what a good order is to do them in, how to avoid the pitfalls in the level. If you're looking to get into Mega Man 2 again, pull up the VOD from the Big 20 and check out what some of these top-tier runners did. But how do you cap off nearly 3 hours of racing? Some of the hardest challenges that the console has to offer. What about with one of the most infuriating titles for anyone who picked up this system? One that even AVGN didn't take down in his review. Yeah, we're talking about Beat Ninja Gaiden. You could have started me here at the same time that Yogi started the race, and I still would have lost by, I don't know, probably hours at this point. By the way, Yogi was through this game at the point that most people had even started. Well, as I'm sure you can guess by now, Yogi took the win. Yogi wrecked Ninja Gaiden in short succession. It was unbelievable. It was such a cool thing to witness. Okay, as you probably guessed by now, I absolutely love this event. Right? I loved seeing the classics crushed. It was nice to see some top talents take time out of their weekend to participate in it. But I asked the same question in my last video. You know, what's keeping the speedrunning community from having a lot more events like these? The Big 20 is a twice-a-year event, I think, is best I was kind of able to find out. And I know that there's like some Big 8s and some Big 10s every now and then, but what's keeping people from having like a Segathon? What's keeping them from having a SNES 20? And if you're one of those people about to type into the comments, you know, YoBGS, those exist. How can I not find them? I'm somebody who's interested in speedrunning, and even then, it is still hard for me to find information about these events, and I wish that that wasn't the case. Because, like, I love speedrunning. So if you can get me switched onto it, hopefully we can get some other people, you know, tuned into it as well. And I guess most importantly, as I start to wrap up here, what type of content would you like to see, right? Do you want to see more speedrunning news type stuff, walkthroughs like the ones I've done before? Do you want to see 12-hour challenges, you know, where I try and learn as much of a game as I can in 12 hours and do a run for you? Tournament recaps? I had a blast doing this, so I'd be more than happy to do a lot more tournament and marathon recaps for you. But leave a comment below. You know, let me know what you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will do my best to get you the kind of content that you want. Because as long as it's speedrunning, I'm having a ball doing it. Well, that is going to do it for me for today. Remember to be safe out there, and I will see you on the Salty Runback.